petite marchioness was still asleep in her snug and scented bedroom. In her big, soft, low bed, under cambric fine as lace, light and caressing as a kiss, she was lying alone and peaceful, deep and happy in a divorcee's sleep. Voices woke her, raised in the little blue drawing room, and she recognised her dear friend, the petite Baroness of Garry, arguing with the chambermaid, who was barring the door of her mistress. So the petite marchioness rose, drew the bolts, unlocked the door, opened it and pushed her head through, just her blonde head, half hidden under a cloud of hair. "What's going on?" she asked. "Why are you here so early? It's not even 9 o'clock." The petite Baroness, pale, nervous, upset, replied, "I must speak to you. A dreadful thing has happened to me." "Well, come in, ma chérie." The Baroness entered, and the two women embraced, and the petite marchioness got back into bed while the chambermaid opened up the windows, letting in air and light. When the maid had left, Madame de Renedon said, "Go on then, tell me what's happened." Madame Garry started to cry, shedding those lovely transparent tears that make women even more attractive. She stammered, careful not to rub her eyes in case they reddened. "Oh, ma chérie, it's dreadful what's happened to me. I haven't slept a wink. I didn't sleep a wink last night, not a wink. Here, feel my heart, feel how it beats." And taking her friend's hand, she pressed it to her breast. That firm, round shield of a woman's heart, so satisfying to men, they often don't bother with what's beneath it. And yes, her heart was beating very hard. The Baroness began to tell her story. "It happened yesterday, about 4 o'clock, or 4:30, I don't remember. You know my flat? Well, you know my little drawing room, where I always sit, overlooks the Rue Saint-Lazare from the first floor. And you know how I love to sit at the window, watch the world go by. It's so gay, the district around the station, so bustling, so alive, and I do love that. Well, I was sitting on the little chair that I've had put in the window recess, and the window was open, and I was letting my thoughts wander, just enjoying the fresh air. You'll remember how fine it was yesterday. Well, suddenly I notice, on the other side of the street, there's another woman at her window. A woman in red. Well, I was in mauve, you see, my lovely mauve dress. I didn't know this woman, some new tenant or other, only there a month, and because the weather hadn't been so great for the last month, I hadn't caught a glimpse of her before. But I realised, rather suddenly, she was a tart. At first I was disgusted and shocked. Shocked, there she was at her window, just like me. And then bit by bit, I found it amusing to watch her. She was leaning on her elbows, watching out for men. And men were all looking up at her. Well, almost all of them. You'd have said they were alerted by something as they approached the house, that they smelt something in the way that dogs smell game. Because they raised their heads suddenly and very quickly and exchanged a glance with her, like a sort of Masonic question and answer. Her glance said, "Do you want it?" And theirs answered, "Too busy," or "Another time," or "No money," or "How dare you, you hussy!" It was the eyes of the respectable family men making the last reply. Well, you can't imagine how droll it was to watch her having her fun, or rather plying her trade. Sometimes she suddenly closed the window and I saw a man going through the door. She'd reeled him in, you see, like an angler with a fish. Then I started to check my watch. They never stayed longer than between 12 and 20 minutes. She really fascinated me in the end, this spider woman. And she wasn't bad looking either. I asked myself, how does she make herself so easily understood, so quickly, so completely? Does she make a movement with her head or her hand as she looks at them? So I lifted my opera glasses to see how she did it. Oh, it was quite simple. First, a glance. Then, a smile. And then, a very small movement of the head that asked, "Do you want to come up?" But so small, so casual, so discreet that it took a lot of skill to carry off something like that. And I asked myself, could I do it as well as her? That tiny jerk of the head, both challenging and charming, because it was very charming, the way she did it. So I went to try it in front of my mirror, ma chérie. And well, I did it better than she did. Much better. Yes, I was delighted. And I returned to sit at the window. She wasn't hooking anybody now, poor girl, nobody at all. She was having no luck at all. How terrible it must be to earn money that way. Terrible, but entertaining too, because, you know, some of them aren't all bad, the men you see in the street. Now, all of them were passing on my side, not a single one on hers, because the sun had moved, you see. And they came along one after the other, young men, old men, dark, fair, grey, white. Well, I said to myself, if I made this signal to them, would they understand me, even though I'm a respectable woman? And suddenly, I was seized by an insane longing to make the signal. Oh, such a longing like one of those pregnant women get. A terrible longing, you know, one of those longings. You just can't resist them. I have them sometimes like that. So stupid, isn't it? I think we're very like monkeys, we women. We always have to imitate somebody. I think it's a doctor who told me that, actually. We imitate our husbands while we love them in the first month or so. Then we imitate our lovers. We imitate our friends, our confessors. We adopt their ways of thinking, their ways of talking, their words, their gestures, everything. It's stupid, really. Anyway, when I'm very tempted to do something, I always do it. So I said to myself, let's see. I'll try it on one man. Only one man, you see, just to see what could happen. What could happen to me, after all? Nothing. We'll exchange a smile. That will be it. I'll never see him again. And if I do see him again, he won't recognize me. And if he does recognize me, then I'll deny it. So I start looking out for the right man. I wanted someone who was good looking. Very good looking, and suddenly I see a big one, a fair one. You know how I like the fair ones. I look at him. He looks at me. I smile. He smiles. And then I give him the gesture that says, "Do you want to come up?" And my God, he walks straight into the building. In he comes, ma chérie. He comes right in by the main entrance of the flat. You can't imagine what I felt right then. Oh, I thought I'd go crazy. Oh, what a fright. Just think, he'd certainly speak to the servants. To Joseph, who's completely devoted to my husband. Joseph would certainly believe I'd known this stranger for a long time. What could I do? Tell me, what could I do? Well, he'd be ringing the bell very shortly, so I decided it would be best to run and meet him, tell him it was a terrible mistake, beg him to go away. So I opened the door just as he was lifting his hand to the bell. I stammered, completely beside myself. I said, "Please go away, monsieur. Please go away. You've made a big mistake. I am a respectable woman, a married woman. A mistake. It's all a mistake, a dreadful mistake. I thought you were one of my friends, you see. You look very much like him." So he bursts out laughing, and he says, "Well, darling, you know I've heard that one before. You're married, so you'll charge 2 louis instead of 1. Don't worry, you'll get them. Come on, show me the way." And he pushed in, closed the door, and I stood there, terrified, in front of him. He embraced me, took me by the waist, and led me into the drawing room. I'd left the door open, you see. Once he was in, he had a look around like an auctioneer. And he said, "Well, this isn't bad, this setup, very smart. You must be short of cash at the moment to play the window game. And I started to beg again. "Oh, monsieur, please, please go away. My husband will be back soon. He'll be back very soon. He always arrives around this time. I swear to you, you've made a terrible mistake." And he replied calmly, "Come on, beautiful, enough of that. If your husband comes back, I'll give him 100 sous to pop across the way for a drink." Then he sees Raoul's photograph on the mantelpiece, and he asks, "Is that him, your husband?" "Yes," I say, "that's him." He doesn't look up to much. "And that girl there, who's that? One of your friends?" "Well, it was your photograph, ma chérie. And you know, the one of you in the ball gown?" Well, I didn't know what to say anymore. I was beside myself, so I just stammered, yes, that's one of my friends." "She's very nice. You'll have to introduce us." And right then the clock starts to strike 5, and Raoul always comes back at 5:30. So, well, think of it. I lost my head, completely lost it. I thought, well, what is the best way of getting rid of him? What if Raoul comes back while he's still here? The sooner I get it over with, the better. And, well, of course he had to have it. So, well, I bolted the door, and, that was that. When she stopped speaking, the petite Marchioness of Renaudon burst out laughing madly, her head buried in her pillow, making the whole bed shake. When she'd recovered a little, she asked, And he was good-looking, this lad?" "Yes." "Then what are you complaining about?" "But look, ma chérie, it's like this. Well, he said he'd come back tomorrow at the same time, and I'm out of my mind with worry. You've no idea how determined he is, how strong-willed. Well, so tell me, what can I do? What can I do?" The petite Marchioness sat up in her bed to think it over, and then she said abruptly, "Have him arrested." The petite Baroness was astonished. She stammered, How do you mean? What are you thinking of? Have him arrested? On what pretext?" "Oh, it's quite simple. You go to the Chief of Police and tell him that some man has been following you about for 3 months. Say he was brazen enough to come to your flat yesterday, and he's threatened to come again tomorrow. So you're asking for the protection of the law. They'll give you 2 policemen to arrest him." "But ma chérie, if he spills the beans..." "He won't be believed. You silly thing. After all, you'll have your story straight with the chief. You'll be the credible one. You're a respectable woman, without a stain on your name." "But just think what he'll do. Think what he'll say. What I got up to when he's arrested." "Well, so what? You'll have plenty of witnesses for your good character and can get a court order against him." "What kind of court order?" "Oh, he'll have to pay damages. In a case like this, you have to be merciless." "Oh, yes. Well, speaking of damages, there's something that's worrying me a lot. You see, he left me 2 louis on the mantelpiece." 2 louis? "Yes." "Is that all? I'd have been rather offended." "Well, what should I do with the money?" The petite Marchioness hesitated for a few seconds, and then answered in a very serious tone. "Ma chérie, you'll have to buy a little gift for your husband. It would only be just, after all that's gone by."